Welcome back to Humans of Ethereum. In this episode, I have a very fun, broad-ranging, and special live conversation with Griff Green, who happened to be in New York for a few days, so we took the opportunity to do the first live conversation for Humans of Ethereum. Griff, of course, has been a member of and a prolific contributor to the Ethereum community since the very old days. He's probably contributed to as many as a dozen projects, including the original DAO, where he had a very hands-on role, as well as more recently projects like Giveth and Ident3. He's also the leader of Camp Decentral at Burning Man, so this is a bit of a Burning Man special edition of Humans of Ethereum. In addition to Griff's work on all these exciting projects, we also talk about some very high-level important topics such as economics and the state of the world economy and how to make the economy fairer, the origin of value, and lessons that we can learn from experiments like Burning Man. It's a fun episode. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Without further ado, let's kick off with episode 8 of Humans of Ethereum, featuring a special in-person interview with Griff Green. Griff, how's it going?
Living the dream, man.
We gotta do that. So this is an experiment. So Humans of Ethereum is an experiment, and this is the first one I've tried doing in person.
Human to human.
Human to human, H to H. So we're hoping that like the video quality and the audio quality will work. There's a party going on just over there, so hopefully...
It's New York, there's always a party.
Yeah, it's true. So I always like to kick off by asking people to tell their own story, introduce themselves, with a little bit of an emphasis upon like what you were doing before Ethereum. And you have such an interesting story.
Yeah.
Take it away. Just start wherever you want to start.
Well, man, it's really hard because I feel like there's always this background of I started as a chemical engineer, and so but then I became too much of a hippie to build factories because that's basically what chemical engineers do. So, and I also became fed up with the whole economic system. Just the whole thing, it feels like a scam. It still feels like a scam to me. So I'm really still...
What year are we in here now?
This is 2009,
okay.
right?
Okay.
Ish, right? And then I eventually, like by 2011, I totally left the country and just went full on nomad and just started traveling around. I learned Thai massage in Thailand, and I
can speak to the power of a griffsage.
Yeah.
Having been a fortunate recipient once or twice.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely how I make sure the devs love working for me. Just get a little shoulder action. But I ended up taking while I was in Thailand. I also bought my first Bitcoins. I had a friend who found a way to get them. I'd heard about them since 2011. But I never wanted to wire something to Mt. Gox, so I just couldn't buy it until someone else found out about Coinbase early on, and so they bought me some Bitcoin. I actually gave them gold for Bitcoin.
Yeah, so you were an early adopter of being a nomad, early adopter of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, but I know about the gold thing because I heard you describe it in your Zero Knowledge episode. So Tell us, we could include a link to that as well so people can hear the full story there, but mention that as well because it's so interesting.
It's really funny because I just hate the banking system. I hate that whole scam. So the whole financial industry feels like such a scam.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be any part of it. So I actually stored value in physical gold and silver. I'd go to the Mint. There's I don't know if it still exists anymore.
The Mint, where?
Northwest Territorial Mint. It's in Tacoma, south of Seattle.
Wow.
So I would literally cash out my paycheck.
It's like a United States federal mint.
It's a private mint.
And
they mint like little gold coins or silver coins or whatever, and they would buy gold and silver, and you'd have to pay $60 over spot price or whatever, and then you have this chunk of thing that you could basically only sell to someone who wants it. It's not an open market like crypto.
It's not super liquid, yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get rid of.
But so you're carrying gold coins, and then I'm just going back again to when I first heard you describe this, like, I'm like a big fan of fantasy games. Like, did you have like the pouch here?
No.
Like you had the coins, and you're kind of like, excuse me, sir, let me count down to a few doubloons.
I wish, man. No, I did have a bunch of dimes, right? Silver dimes.
Silver dime. What is a silver dime worth?
A silver dime, man, I don't know what it's worth right now. At the time, it was worth maybe $1.30.
Okay, all right.
Right? Something like that. But at that time, gold and silver were going to the moon. Right? And so I actually rode this gold and silver wave.
You weren't buying it to speculate. You were literally buying it to exit from the banking system.
Yeah,
okay.
Of course. I got in a little late, but it was still going up, right? And so I actually did double my money in gold and silver, though. Buying gold.
It's so funny because what you're describing about getting in early and about not intending to speculate, etc. Like this is what happened to so many people in kind of the Bitcoin, Ethereum
No, and then it was like, oh, Bitcoin, that's way better than physical, like silver, you know? Like, it's just way easier to store, way easier to deal with.
So you discovered it because of a friend who bought you some Bitcoin when you were living in Thailand, it sounds like.
I had discovered it from the Austrian economics, like groups, you know?
Okay.
And then eventually I was able to access it when I traded $3,000 worth of silver and gold for Bitcoin.
Okay.
Right? And then I bought a bunch of Litecoin, Namecoin, Purecoin, basically
all
everything.
The coins that existed at that time, the basket.
Yeah, on BTC-E, right? That was the exchange that...
I've not heard of it, which means it probably doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't. Actually, it was... it had a pretty funny story that they got shut down by the government because they were like owned by some mysterious Russian guy that no one knew, right? Some kind of Russian mobster or something. And then they were chasing down the hackers of Mt. Gox, and somehow it was related to BTC-E, and that's what led them to find the guys that ran this. I can't remember the story exactly.
Wow.
It was only maybe a year ago or 2 years ago that they got shut down, so.
Wow, wild. Okay, cool. So you were doing the nomad thing.
I was doing the nomad thing. I was actually in LA at this time. I had a girlfriend in LA, and I was massaging. I was doing
like professionally.
Yeah, oh man, I got some crazy stories.
So you were supporting yourself.
Yeah, $200 a massage, right?
Sure.
I would give like a 2-hour massage,
yeah.
Maybe a little longer, and then actually. And it was all on Craigslist and just like word of mouth cards.
But so you must have gotten paid in cash then.
Yeah.
So how did you move that cash into?
Well, I would
Bitcoin?
spend the cash, right?
Got it.
But then, and then eventually I didn't have a bank account until I needed to figure out how to buy Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
Like, because
KYC AML.
Yeah, and so then I had to get a bank account so I could use Coinbase. It sucks.
Well, but so local Bitcoins now exists, and you can use it in some cases, I think, at least up to certain amounts to avoid that. So was that not a possibility?
It existed. I used it, right? I was trying. That's how I first started playing with any kind of making money in local Bitcoins.
Okay.
And I just wanted also, I'm a community organizer.
Yeah.
While I was a chemical engineer, I also was part of this group called Save Our Sonics. I was like the number one, maybe number two, like Seattle Supersonics fan.
Yeah. I got the reference. I'm proud of myself.
and but they don't exist anymore. They were actually bought by this guy in Oklahoma, and so I was like general of the fans, and I was organizing rallies, and for 2 years I organized like people coming to Seattle, people going to the Sonics games, signing petitions, all this stuff. And then there was a court case, and we were actually going to win. We were going to force the Oklahoma guy to have to stay in Seattle for 2 more years to fulfill the lease agreement of the stadium. And the day the judge was supposed to read the verdict, the mayor signed a deal that just like kind of undid all the work that we had done to get to that point to stop this. You know, we did all this political action. 2 years, it was like a side full-time job, and we were going to win. And with one like
stroke of a pen kind of thing,
the Mayor Nichols just signed away the team and said, "Give us $60 million and we're good."
Wow.
Right? I think it was $30 million and then $30 more million if we don't get a team in 5 years afterwards or something.
Wow.
Like, I don't even know if they fulfilled that end.
Wow.
But it was like that was the thing, because I was obsessed with this team. That was like my identity, right?
I've known you for a while, and I didn't know that you were into sports at all.
And now I'm not, right? And so like.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, and I was also like, my life purpose was actually just to get courtside seats and be a chemical engineer
and so it's just funny to think in an alternate reality, which is not that different from the world we live in. Like Griff, today you might have courtside seats and be a chemical engineer and be a productive, upright citizen, member of the banking system, etc. So what was it? So this is one of the things, I guess.
That was the big thing. Yeah. That was like the biggest thing that happened. The turning point in my life was the Sonics moving to Oklahoma City, and then I was just like, well, fuck Seattle, fuck the U.S. I was already leaning towards the whole like Austrian economics anarchist kind of vibe.
Okay.
But when that happened, it was like, okay, I'm out, man.
So
I don't need to be here anymore.
So you're like the number one best example I can think of a human who like truly not just speaks about decentralization, but like lives the decentralization ethos for so many reasons, right? Because Camp Decentral, which we'll talk about in a moment. Obviously, you've been doing this for quite some time, but like what was it? Was it that the legal process is too centralized? Like, I just want to understand the connection. What is it that pushed you onto this path, kind of?
I'm an anarchist.
An anarchist by nature.
Yeah, distribution of power is really important to me, and the financial system is the biggest source of power. And I do think that this Sonics thing really like cemented that, where it's like, how does this one mayor get to make this decision? Like that's fucking wild. And so I hope I can swear.
I guess we'll find out. If we get banned from YouTube, we'll know we can't.
Yeah. Add
an adult, not adult content, but you know what I mean, adult language.
Yeah. I just feel like this whole the systems that we have at play are just so corrupt.
Rigged, kind of.
They're rigged.
Yeah.
There's so many like scams out there. The rich just keep getting richer, and people don't even understand why. People don't understand how value is created in our economies. And
so what does Griffnomics look like, if I can just?
Well, I'll tell you, it probably looks like Burning Man if I had to really do something.
Okay. But does that scale?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it scales to Burning Man. It's a culture, right? Like, I don't think if you really want to talk about like what should it look like, it probably doesn't have a whole lot to do with crypto. It has a whole lot to do with knowing that we are all people and we all have needs and we all have skills and we can all contribute together to coordinate those skills. And and the cultural coordination is probably going to be more impactful than the numbers. The numbers, it's easy. The numbers are easy, a lot easier than cultural effort. But if we got rid of all of the bureaucrats, if we really got rid of all the accountants, all the lawyers, and all of these people, and instead had them trained for like kind of cultural trimming and trying to bring in more effort into keeping that culture alive that allows for a culture of giving and coordinating around like who has skills.
Sure.
I think you would be surprised at how much work we put in to maintain our current economy.
Sure.
But I don't really have a clue, man. Like that's what Griffonomics looks like. I tried, I escaped this world for like many years, the whole system. But guess what? The system didn't go away. It's like it's
kind of like one of those things, like a kid closes your eyes and says, no, I can't see you, you can't see me type thing. But actually, you open your eyes, you returned, you had a homecoming presumably at some point, and you're like, oh shit, the system still kind of sucks.
Yeah.
And actually, it's kind of gotten worse.
Really. It's not getting better, that's for sure. Right? Because power is getting more centralized. So.
Quick aside here, are you familiar at all with Andrew Yang, U.S. presidential candidate?
Yeah.
I'm in the process of reading his book right now, The War on Normal People. And he talks really compellingly about a lot of these things. I love the idea of UBI. I'm also a little skeptical of it, so I think we could talk about. But he makes a very similar case to the case that you're describing right now, which is that GDP doesn't even begin to measure all the things that matter, like human happiness and satisfaction and things like health, or our children growing up, with the right sets of behaviors and are they healthy and do they have the right sets of ethics and all this kind of stuff, and none of this is captured by capitalism.
Yeah, it's the economic model, right? We have an economic model that does a fantastic job at quantifying individual wants and needs and coordinating around those efforts.
In the market.
Right? Yeah, the market is this amazing coordination force.
Right.
But it doesn't quantify and therefore can't coordinate around shared resources or taking care of the less fortunate in society, which are things that have value. They have value
Social
to everyone.
Value.
Yeah, and why does it have to? It's fucking value, right? Just like a bottle of water has value, but a bottle of water has value, right? And a bottle of water in the place that you need it has value. But for some reason, the water in a spring that's a public spring doesn't have value, right? If Coca-Cola buys that spring, all of a sudden that water has value. But if it's just something that is a publicly shared resource, it doesn't. And that is a flaw in our economic models, right? That we are using to coordinate.
There's a couple things that break markets, to borrow economic terminology, right? So one of those is public goods, which I think is what you're getting at. There's certain types of externalities, right? Things like pollution, that are not accounted for in the cost of goods in the market. So without a doubt, we've known for quite some time. This goes back to what you were saying about the Austrian school. I don't know. I'm not really an economist. I'm out of my league here. But we've known for some time that there are these categories of things, categories of goods that just the market doesn't. They break markets. The market doesn't kind of solve these problems.
Yeah.
And so maybe we need to think bigger.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I don't know that we will solve this. I don't think that it's easy to do, and probably not going to happen. But we can start to mitigate these issues, right? Like this is what I'm working with on the Common Stack. Is just like, a company can issue stock based off of the value that they produce. Why can't a nonprofit also issue, create some sort of financial asset?
Yeah.
They're creating value. People care about their value. But when you support a company, you are an investor and you receive a token of value, an asset, a stock, right? Dividends, if they offer dividends, either way, you get to buy a piece of paper. And I'll tell you, that is some bullshit. Straight up, okay? That is the biggest fraud that we have in our economic system today, is the fact that the SEC and some company can get together and create value out of nothing. Like Amazon is my favorite example because, well, Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world, and it's purely because of the deal he made with the SEC in 1997.
Tell us about this. You told me about this today. I wasn't aware of this.
Well, they sold 11% of their stock to the public, right? For about $50 million. And I think it was 40 something or whatever, right? So let's just say 10% for $50 million,
sure.
Right?
Keeps the math simple.
Yeah, I like simple math. And then they have 90%, right? Where's that 90% going? It's going to their friends or whatever, other investors. Jeff Bezos got 43% of that, right? So he sold 10% of his stock for $50 million. He made $500,000 worth of fake paper. Value that didn't exist before.
$500 million.
Sorry, $500 million, thank you. $500 million of fake paper that doesn't exist. It's not even paper, right? It's all digital, I'm sure. And then gives himself 43% of that.
This reminds me, I can't help but think of the ICO craze, obviously. Yeah. And people were saying, oh, market cap, let's measure the number one, number two blockchain by market cap. And then someone is like, okay, I'm going to issue 1 trillion, tokens and sell one for $1 to my friend. And now I've got $1 trillion market cap. It's exactly the same idea. But have you created $1 trillion worth of value?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I call it the market cap illusion. There's got to be some kind of word for this in market theory.
Sure there is, yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard anyone talk about it because it feels like these are dirty little secrets. Mm-hmm. These we all talk about the banking system and how they create value out of nothing by commercial banks making loans and using a reserve ratio, right? And then they just create money,
creating new money, right? Or also packaging things up together. What's the term for that?
Like derivatives?
Yeah, like taking derivatives and then what happened in leading up to the financial crisis in 07, 08.
Yeah. It's the creation of financial assets.
Commoditization, something like that.
They're creating financial assets around things in the real world that have some kind of thing, whether it's packaging insurance contracts or
that's what derivative
mortgages.
Means. Is their value is derived from some, in theory, some real world substance.
And the people that get to create those derivatives, they're creating value out of nothing that has no actual physical. It's like there might be some kind of physical reality that it's being built off of, but then it's like 1%. It's like a reserve ratio, just like how a bank does it. There's like a little bit of things. And so, but this abstraction is something that just allows for-profit companies to be even more powerful when it comes to, taking profits out of externalities, right? And really capitalizing on things that don't have a value in a spreadsheet, but have value to humans. Whereas nonprofits are still stuck in this please give me money. Yeah, you won't get anything in return. Yeah, we're going to underpay people who are probably, overqualified, and they're going to do their best until they get frustrated and get a real job. It's like...
It's pretty spot on, actually, based on what I know about the way nonprofits work.
These are the people that are protecting the river, whereas the person polluting the river, they don't want to pollute that river, but their spreadsheet tells them they have to. And they just...
because it maximizes profits, because companies are machines that serve shareholder value, or at least in the past few decades they have been. That's
their shareholders could sue them.
It's actually a pretty recent phenomenon.
Yeah.
It didn't always used to be that way.
I mean, there's legal protections for shareholders that if they stop polluting the river, they could get sued.
That's the fiduciary duty. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of terrifying.
This is wild, right? And little nonprofit over here is like, we just want a clean river for our kids to play in, right? Like, oh my God, how are they supposed to compete with people that can multiply their efforts? So
what do we do about all this? So I'm generally.
Well, this is where crypto comes in. We can build new economies. Like my real the transition that I would like to see is why can't we have an economy around that river?
Okay.
There's value being produced.
So I learned recently, are you familiar with the work being done in New Zealand around granting, we have corporate personhood for companies, right?
Yeah.
So they began granting personhood to things like rivers that are important artifacts in like local, culture, historical Maori culture, whatever it is. And so there were people who began looking at building like crypto economies around that or tokenizing it.
Oh, really?
I don't think that didn't actually fly, but there are people working on this, so we should talk to them.
Well, there's a lot of these security laws issues, right?
Yes. Everywhere. This is like my personal hill that I want to die on.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity with token bonding curves to remove, make it non-transferable, like DXDAO did a non-transferable token. So like...
reputation, right.
Yeah, the rep, right?
Just to be explicit about this, in theory, you can always hand your private keys to someone and sell them.
Of course.
So it's impossible to truly prevent it.
Dude, Gnosis, like Martin Kopelman was telling everyone, hey, put it in a Gnosis safe. You can always transfer it.
You can share it, exactly.
You can. It's an owned contract, so you can do it. This was what got in the way of Digix, like doing a transaction fee on their token. It's like, it's just when you would just wrap the token and then never pay the transaction fee, right? Like, and so you can always basically wrap anything to still transfer it.
Right.
But why would you go through all that effort if you actually have a market that's built into the system? Right? So, and another thing is that if the token can only be transferred by the issuer, like if it only be bought and sold by the issuer, then it's no longer part of the securities domain.
Interesting, I wasn't aware of that.
And then the other piece is that there's a lot of talking about how Bitcoin and Ethereum aren't securities because they're decentralized, at least decentralized enough. So if you create a fully decentralized system from the start, then you really don't have to worry about being a security. And so it's like taking these guidelines, like we should be able to follow the rules of both worlds. If we can create a financial asset that can be a derivative of value that's really being produced, even though it may not work on a spreadsheet, there is still value being produced.
Are you familiar with the idea of a social impact bond? Because I feel like this idea kind of has been sort of tried a little bit in quote unquote real world, default world finance. Mm-hmm. These were really hot like 10-ish years ago, and I haven't heard much about them recently. Yeah. This is the idea where like an investor can buy a social impact bond, which has to do with like, reincarceration rates in prisons or something. The idea is that money would then be used to go do some social good in the world, and if it's able to move the needle and that task succeeds, then the investor gets paid some sort of dividend or something, or not a dividend in the case of a bond, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, usually these are sponsored by some government or something like that, right? Yeah. So, or at least... but
is that kind of what you have in mind when you're saying like tied to some real world?
No, for me, it's the same as a stock. It's this the market cap illusion, right? The value of Amazon stock is not actually $1 trillion.
Right.
If Jeff Bezos decided to sell all his stock, the last stock would be worth zero because he probably couldn't find enough people to buy all of his stock if he was selling all of it.
Fair enough. So that's what you mean by illusion.
Yeah, the market cap illusion.
It's what we mean when we say value exists on paper.
Yeah.
It's not like liquid.
Yeah, but yet it is. And our whole financial system is built on this idea that we have, this concrete value based off of market cap.
Okay.
Which is just wild.
Interesting.
Just wild.
Interesting.
Now, if we use a token bonding curve, right, and the price of the token, I don't know if this is the place to be like going deep into token bonding curves, right? But I can even more generalize it because there's also this awesome tool called Hamburger tax.
The hamburger tax,
hamburger tax, that's right.
I like to make things accessible,
You buy a hamburger today and you pay them back next Tuesday. No, so then there's these cool crypto economic primitives that we can use to create financial assets that then distribute funds to a DAO or distribute funds to a organization that will then allocate those resources to something important. While there is value being created around this financial derivative, just as the same old shit that happens in our fucking scam of a system, right? Like. And for me, it's like, okay, it's not fixing the system. It's a transitional piece.
So there's different ways to approach this, right? So there's the let's fix the system from inside.
Yeah.
There's the famous Buckminster Fuller quote, right, which is like, let's not try to fix the broken system. Let's build a better system, right? Build a better alternative that makes the broken system obsolete.
Yeah.
So I guess I feel like the anarchists are probably like more about building a better system than trying to fix the existing system. Where do you fall on that?
I say
spectrum?
both and, you know, like this is like the Ron Paul movement versus like the Molotov cocktail movement,
pretty
you
much.
know, like, so like, you know, you can work within this system to build some things. I wouldn't say that building stuff on top of Ethereum is working within this system.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that we don't know how things need to evolve. And one of the most important things that I'm working on right now is with block science and Michael Zarka.
Yeah, I was going to say when we
we
talked about token bonding curves and that sort of stuff. I mean, they're the real experts.
We have the ability to actually build and simulate, like, and design full economies, right? You can't do that right now. Like in our current economic models, we have this open economy, and then the rules of the economy are built by a regulatory agent, right? And they say XYZ is not allowed.
Right.
And then, you know, everyone says, well, actually it is, as long as you don't hear about it. And then they do them anyway, right? Or they're very free to go.
Right.
Whereas in a blockchain, or in any, even
the
a
rules
token,
are in code, so you can't violate the rules.
Yeah, the regulators are there. And so now the rules are actually can be formulated mathematically. You can actually describe what's happening.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I mean, obviously, I'm very aware of that idea, and that idea is very powerful and important to me as well. But I never thought about it in this particular context, which is that, like, Nick Szabo has this concept of wet code versus dry code, where wet code is basically code in the legal sense of the word, right? So laws, which, as we were saying before, people can always find ways around. There's always backdoors or loopholes or whatever. Versus dry code, which is written in something like computer code, and there is no way around it. So that's a fascinating and important distinction, I think.
Yeah, but what's really cool is then you can actually simulate this code, right? And you can iterate off of that simulation.
Right.
So you first, if it's actually just like dry code, like you're saying, then you can formalize it in math, because there's no regulatory agency. It is math. Right. And then
code is math.
And then you deploy, and then you learn. Oh, it's broken. It doesn't work because XYZ. Oh, you just throw those XYZ into the simulation, and then see if your methods to solve XYZ work according to the simulation. Okay, they do. Deploy again. Guess what? It's not going to work again.
The thing is, though, like, I'm skeptical of this because I feel like you can't simulate human rational behavior when it comes to like economic decision making. That's the whole point of the whole field of behavioral economics, is that people don't act rational.
Of course, but you're not simulating
the behavior.
When you say
deploy.
It's like rules to a game, right? You don't know how the actors are going to play.
Exactly.
But you can make the game better, more fair, more even.
Right.
Maybe the first person who goes first actually counts last. You know, these kinds of like solutions that people have to games. You're never going to simulate humans, right? Like, you're not going to be perfect at it. It's always a model. This is where we are now. We are working with a flawed economic model that doesn't value shared resources or the
humanity, basically.
Yeah, humanity, right? And here we are at the Humanity podcast. But yeah, I mean, our economic models don't value that. But, you know, maybe there's a way that we can start adding something in so that those things don't get totally just screwed.
My biggest issue with a lot of what Andrew Yang talks about, hey Andrew, if you're listening to this,
Yang DAO,
Yang DAO, that could be a thing.
Yeah. Oh, Yang DAO is a thing. The Meta Cartel guys are working on it.
Okay, I'm totally into it. My biggest issue with it is the following, right? I love the vision and I agree with the problem statement. The thing is, like, economic output is relatively easy to measure, right? Mm-hmm. Something like GDP. It's grossly oversimplified. It's clearly reductionist, right? All those other measures of human welfare, like, they're fuzzy things. And maybe, okay, we have the Millennium Development Goals. Like, there are some things that are definitely measurable, but I worry that it's going to be hard to capture like empirical data on all those things. Yeah. Reduce them to numbers.
Of course it is. It's going to be hard. As far as the Yang gang and you know, the idea of UBI, it's like, hey, money is being created every day. Yeah. Why not create it instead of allowing banks to create it? Let's make these guys create it, or do both, right? And we have a little bit higher of inflation rate. Like, it's not the end of the world. You know, the Federal Reserve's job is to make sure your dollar is worth, you know, 98 cents. What if their job next year? Like, they need to make sure that there's a 2% inflation rate every year.
They target inflation and they also target unemployment.
Yeah, well, they use that, but like, you know, one of the probably their biggest job is to make sure that there is 2% inflation every year.
That's the
right. That's their easiest metric. That's for sure. Right. And so they adjust interest rates, kind of like MakerDAO does, right? And then they go forward. And so, you know, if instead they say, hey, you know, let's make sure that it's 97 cents every year, and we're going to give every person, you know, $1,000 and reduce the amount that the banks are allowed to loan, I don't think that would really destroy our economy. I do think that it would give a lot of people a lot of help. And so probably do more.
Yang's proposal is to use a VAT to do it, which every developed economy in the world has except the United States.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it's in some ways more fair than like an income tax, right? So it's tax on value consumed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that's okay. Personally, I would like to start. I just hate the fact that banks are allowed to create money. You know,
sure.
Like it's
and only banks.
Yeah.
It would almost be okay if it were like
only banks.
Banks can do it, and Griff Coin exists, and Lane Coin exists, right? But
well,
I mean, now they do. But
yeah, exactly. And now that's what's magical about crypto is it's not only banks, right? But and then we always forget that it isn't only banks because of all the derivatives and all the financial assets
that's a good point.
People are creating.
There are like trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. It's shocking of notional value. Notional is the word we use to refer to this fake value that's like. You know.
But when we abstract, like, what does that fake value actually allow them to do? It allows them to live in, you know, buy Lamborghinis and live in mansions and have yachts and have all of this like hoarding of value.
But in a sense, we're all guilty of this, right? Because like it's our behavior, it's our drinking that Kool-Aid that enables this whole system to function in the first place.
Of course,
that's capitalism, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, and this is the challenge. It's like. Do we tear it all down and build something new from scratch, or do we try to like fix it a little bit at a time? And you know, in the end, I think the awareness of this scam is the most important thing, and then we just have to decide. Everyone gets to pick how they want to go forward after that. But I really don't think most people even have like this inkling of like why everyone has this unconscious feeling that there's something broken, but it's like. I don't even think I'm nailing it. You know, this is like one small piece.
It's very easy to point at things that are broken. It's much harder to propose constructive solutions. Like I'm with you, as I said, I'm with you and with the Yang Gang on the problem statement, right? But I think that like inevitably, like I have one, how do I put it? One principle, which is that like before trying to change or solve things, I like to understand why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
And there's a lot I still have to learn about the monetary and banking and financial system, as well as things like politics and political philosophy and all those kinds of things. And the more it's this great irony where the more you understand the system, the more you understand why things are the way they are.
Yeah, no, it's true. And sometimes though, and I think that's really important, but I think I see a lot of promise in the ability to simulate, iterate, and build off of a solid foundation. Because right now, when politicians are adding in new things into the economy, it's really they're just pulling shit out of their ass and saying, yeah, this will probably work. I mean, they have no way to simulate these things. They have no way to do robust engineering, right? Like I was a chemical engineer, right? I was working to build a power plant, right? We simulated everything. The whole power plant was effectively built in a computer.
I learned recently.
Before that.
As an engineer, you'll appreciate this. This is really fascinating. You know how most jet engines, there's two companies, I think, GE and United Electronics or something, that's the name, United Systems, that makes them. So the way GE does it, and I suspect all of them are like this, is that every physical airplane engine in the world has a digital counterpart that exists at all times and that is receiving all the same data, all the same feedback, et cetera. It's constantly running simulations and testing for issues and things. It's fascinating. It's kind of mind-blowing. It's kind of the platonic, like, ideal engineer's, version of the world, right? Where every physical thing has like a digital counterpart. And the thing is, though, that you can't do this with money and economics for the same reason we spoke about, which is why economics is not a hard science. Economics is a social science.
Yeah, but now with crypto, I believe you can.
Interesting.
I'm telling you, because like not only do they simulate it, right, but I guarantee they're doing machine learning and predictive modeling with AI bots that are taking data from the past and predicting how future data will impact this engine to give like an advanced notice of like what could be happening inside.
Interesting.
And
that's fascinating.
If we can do that with economies, and we can actually have the simulation, have an actual digital counterpart, and we can run machine learning and AI like magic. I don't really know how any of that stuff works, but it seems lots of smart people are telling me it's pretty cool. So like
kind of like blockchain.
Yeah, that blockchain stuff. But if we can start modeling and simulating that, and we can actually determine based off of predictive modeling the health of an economy, and when something does go wrong or something we don't predict happens, we can start adding these things in, just as the court system has done within our own legal jurisdictions and our legal systems. You know, it's like a whole lot of things build on top of each other until the thing gets, in an ideal world, it would get better and better. It's at least better able to handle unique situations, right? I don't know whether it gets better or worse.
Kind of anti-fragile, maybe is a word for that. Like kind of over time, it should evolve in that direction.
Yeah, but we need, like, this is where we can turn in economics into a hard science, and we can actually start doing like token physics, right? Like that's actually something that we're trying to work on, is building an economy like a physical system, where there are laws of nature. You know, and it's like gravity is 9.81, you know, and you're just gonna have to deal with that.
I'm still skeptical. I'm like optimistically skeptical or skeptically optimistic about this work for the reasons we talked about. Like I just don't know that that the economic, like Homo economicus, whatever that's called, doesn't really exist, right?
No.
People are kind of do stupid, irrational things that are against their own self-interest, etc. But I do agree that like it's approaching a science with all the data that we have. So yeah, big shout out to tokenomics and to Zargam and block science and all the amazing people. Lest this become too much of a crypto anarchist
I'm
podcast.
so sorry,
No, it's good. We can go down this rabbit hole for hours. I want to come back to you, to the human, right? So you've done, again, we could do several hours of this because you have done so many interesting things. But I guess just catch us up a little bit. I know Giveth has been a big part of your story. You talked about Common Stack before as well. There's Campty Central, like. Maybe we could go through this in order, whatever you think is the best way. Like, let's talk about those things as well.
Projects that I contribute to, like meaningfully, Giveth is like a project that I founded. It's nonprofit, community focused on building like tools in the blockchain space for good, right? Like blockchain for good and it's just an open community that anyone can join, and we there it is, huh? And we're pushing the Common Stack, which is the idea of like building nonprofits and allowing to realign the incentives systems around nonprofit fundraising and putting them so that they can compete and actually protect the systems that they're trying to protect.
Interesting. And is this a blockchain specific thing, or what if my nonprofit is not? So it should be a DAO, basically.
Well, to start, we're focused on just like token engineering research is going to be the first focus for us.
Okay.
And and I imagine that the first several will be mostly open source, Ethereum related projects, because those are the people that can deal with the system that we're creating, MetaMask and that kind of stuff. But the goal is to make it like the whole runway is basically the last step is make something that can be deployed by a normal person for a normal cause, right? And it's not specifically, we're not creating nonprofits. Instead, we're creating communities that have a focus, have communities around a cause that there's an economic system that's aligned to actually support the cause. It's the higher level idea, right? And then that's the project I'm spending most of my time on now, other than Decentral.
Is it still? We'll come back to that in a second. Is it still a non-profit? I'm just trying to get my head around this because it's a radical idea, which is the whole point, right? Is it still a non-profit if the people funding it do have some economic interest in it? I guess, like if the project does well, we all do well.
Yeah. Well, the economy itself. So it's like the economy itself is just a system. There isn't a company, right? There isn't. It's not necessarily a nonprofit. It's not necessarily a for-profit.
It's a cause.
It's an economy. It's an economy around a cause. It's an economy that spits out funding to support a cause.
Can you give me a concrete example of this?
So like let's say that we wanted to build an economy around the river. We bought the river.
Great idea.
So now we have the goal would be to get all the people who really know about this river, the experts and the people who are like
the stakeholders basically.
Yeah, the stakeholders, but especially the people that know what's best for this river.
Okay.
And allow them to all actually buy into a token bonding curve, right? And so, but then their tokens are locked, but they still have governance power. And then you have the bonding curve is now open again for everyone else. So everyone, if you know anything about bonding curves,
people may not. Do you mind introducing what is a bonding curve?
Okay, so a token bonding curve is a smart contract where you send a reserve currency and let's just say DAI. One DAI is $1, right? So you send, let's just say dollars for fun. Okay, you send in $1.
Doge?
Yeah, you send in one Doge.
One Doge is one Doge.
One Doge is always one Doge. That's a good use case. So you send in one Doge and you get one river token, right? And maybe you send in actually 100 Doge and you get 100 river tokens, we'll say, right? And then the next person, they send in 100 Doge, but they only get 99 river tokens because as the supply grows, you're actually changing the price of the token.
As the outstanding supply.
And you're not actually selling or buying. You're actually minting and burning. So when you send in that 100 Doge, 100 river tokens are created.
Spontaneously, like they're minted, basically.
Into reality, right? And then when you sell those, when you send the 100 river tokens into the smart contract, they are burned. And so, and that will change the price of the token based off of the supply. It's actually based off of the reserve, but the supply, you can kind of build
goes both ways,
token physics, right? You can build a invariant around the supply and the reserve.
Right. So in economic terms, it's an automated market maker, basically.
Exactly. And so what's really cool here is, though every token is backed by collateral. And you can actually do math and you can say, okay, if I have this many tokens and this many people sell after I buy it, this will be the price. And this many people buy after I sell it, this will be the price.
Right.
And when if there's one thing to know about token bonding curves, you want to get in early, because when the supply is low, the price is low. So if there's no tokens that exist, the price is very low.
But the shape of the curve can change. So it could be linear, it could be exponential, it could be super linear, sublinear.
Yeah, it could be sigmoid.
You can also
where it starts out like this, and then it goes
up,
out
and then
like
it flattens
that,
off again. Yeah.
Right?
You could also, one thing that I think Simon or someone who has written a lot about this suggested is things like different entry and exit curves, right? So if you want to simulate the effects of something like vesting, right? The idea is that the entry curve is above the exit curve, and so if you were to buy 10 tokens for 10 river tokens for 10 Doge and immediately sell them, you'd only get 8 Doge back.
Yeah.
But if you wait, then the sell curve catches up, right? And then you can exit and make a profit or something.
And that's exactly the mechanism that we're using. Yeah. Whereas like you could call it an exit tax, you can call it a donation percent, you can call it whatever, cool. Right? The branding around this stuff is so hard because we have to make everything up. No one's really defined any of these terms. But when you buy those with 100 Doge, you get 100 river coin or tokens, and then when you sell those 100 river coin tokens right away, you'd actually only get 95 back, so and 5 would actually be donated to a DAO who is focused on helping that river, and that money is spent by the people who have the token. So now the people with the tokens get to decide how those funds are spent, and then we would use Giveth to actually allow a proposal framework so that there's basically an escrow system coming out. So when they decide to spend money, you can actually use the reserve currency as Doge, right? Right now, when you fork Molek or something, you have to give out shares. And right now, those shares are non-transferable. There's all sorts of static there. But the biggest problem is that it's a fluctuating currency. So you can't have like an escrow system. Because maybe, or even like continuous payments. Because maybe the currency that you're using is worth $100 today, and it's a month-long gig, and the price is going to go down to $50.
Well, that introduces other challenges to a system like Moloch as well, which is if the opposite happens, if I put in, buy 100 tokens today and ETH, 10x's, I'm going to be pretty incentivized to pull some of that ETH out and like do something else with it later. So having a stable reserve currency would be very helpful there as well.
Yeah, and so with the Common Stack, we will have a reserve currency that's in a stable token, probably DAI, and then a governance token will be of a variable price based off the
Makes
bonding
sense.
curve.
Yeah,
and
that dual token idea that Maker and a couple of other projects introduced seems pretty.
I mean, it's all because Maker has done so much good work, so much good things for this ecosystem. But anyway, so the common stack, it's still a work in progress.
Cool.
You know, we're not really out fully yet, so like we'll see. Maybe by the time this gets online, it will be. But
we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Camp Decentral, given that we're approaching the final month here leading up to Burning Man. I guess my version of the story is you and I met in Barcelona last year for the first time, but we really met at Burning Man when I showed up and you were dressed as Santa and you were on a scooter, and it was I feel like it's the most stereotypical thing on the planet to come back from Burning Man and say like it was a transformative experience, but it really was.
Yeah.
And Camp Decentral was what allowed me to get over that hump and go for the first time last year. So how did that happen? Like, tell us the human story there.
Well, yeah, in 2011 I went to my first burn and haven't missed one since. It's like instantly the next year I had a geodesic dome and it was like this is reality for me. You know, the rest is the default world. This is home. You know, there's this. Burning Man is the largest economic experiment I know of.
Yeah,
for sure. You know, and there's no money. It's a culture of giving. It's not barter, and it's such an interesting thing. And I feel very passionate about like crypto being able to change the world and make it a better place. I also think burner culture can be a huge positive impact on humans and be really influential. It has been influential to almost everyone I've ever brought there.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have like this urge to bring all of the crypto space to see this experiment.
And you've done massive work doing that. I mean, you said the camp grew a lot last year. It's growing again a bunch this year.
Yeah, doubled inside last year. Now we're adding another 40 people this year.
So
we actually have 2 camps.
What is Camp Decentral and how did it start?
Well, the goal of Camp Decentral, the goal of Decentral is to build this beautiful cross-pollination between burner culture and crypto culture.
Okay.
Right? So
and then we have there's a lot of overlap for sure.
Oh yeah. The people are all the same. Like there's a little bit more nerdy vibe in the crypto scene and a little bit more hippie vibe
in the burner scene. Yeah.
But, you know, there's still a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
And you know, there are a lot of math science people. They're building these crazy art cars and light stuff. Yeah. So they're builders.
Shout out to Kirka who's building.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Kirka is
building
one of the major.
This Doge is going to come to life in a month.
We have a Doge art car. It's going to be incredible. But the goal is that the burners can learn all this information, like learn that they have the tools to build their own economies, right? With crypto,
right.
And the crypto people can learn that there is not just hypercapitalism as a solution.
Sure.
You know, there's a whole lot of there's a wide range of design space for economics.
Yeah.
Because they did indirect exchange at Burning Man without a currency. Okay. That's wild.
It works really well at Burning Man, but I still think it doesn't scale. Like Burning Man is capped at 80,000 people, and it's a week.
Only because of the BLM, right?
But do you think if it were a month-long or a year-long thing,
it could work?
Yeah.
I think humans are adaptive creatures.
Okay.
I actually do think it could work. The challenge would be how do we build this economy without extracting from the old economy,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, would crypto work without a banking system?
Right.
No, probably not, you know? And so, but are we building something that could eventually replace the banking system? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So this is I love this topic because there's a name for this phenomenon. Like in the technical world, it's called inversion, right? Mm-hmm. And so my favorite example of this is phones, right? So the internet in the 80s, starting in the 80s and throughout the 90s, like you're old enough to remember this as well, right? We had modems, and basically the internet flowed over POTS, over plain old telephone lines. And if you asked anyone at the time, they'd be like, there's no way this is going to work. It's not going to scale. They're not designed to carry data, et cetera, et cetera. The bit rate was very limited, right? 28 or 56K or whatever. Fast forward 10 years, and now the phones flow over the internet, right? Yeah. So it's like that infrastructure became so powerful that it flipped. And so my hope is that the same thing happens here, is that today, like in some sense, as we're discussing, crypto and Burning Man kind of rely upon the default world, but like maybe if crypto gets mature enough that the banks, and I actually do think this will happen, right? The banks will eventually like be built on top of blockchain.
I mean, come on, dude. If I'm a government, I want a cryptocurrency. I want to automate the taxation. I don't want people skirting taxation. Programmable currency is incentivized by all the powers that be, right? Like this is, if you want to design an economy, what, are you going to use the wet laws or the dry laws? You know, like the dry code, right? So like dry code is way easier. So Yeah, I also think that there's potential that we can innovate on top of cultural wet laws to build other economies, you know, and that scaled past Dunbar's number, which is the big, like, that was always the big challenge. And now Burning Man has 70,000 people, and it's only capped by the BLM, and they're like, well, it doesn't scale. It's like, well, maybe.
Well, it has scaled
maybe
from 4 people or whatever it was the first time up to 80,000.
I mean, from my perspective, Burning Man is running the default economy. When you're born, you're sucking off the tit, okay? Your mom is giving to you without expectation. Your whole family is giving to you without expectation. When you go and eat at your grandma's house, you don't just throw her $10, okay? That would be insulting, right? There is a familiar economy that happens at Burning Man. It's like one giant family. They scaled the family unit economy.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
And could we scale it to the whole world? Maybe, maybe not. Burning Man has done it for a week. It's a great experiment. It's definitely not proof, but it's a lot better than, like, you know, it's not proving that it can't work.
I will say one thing. There was a lot of reverse culture shock when I came back. In fact, I flew directly at the end of the burn from Reno back to New York, and it was kind of like wandering around the streets here, like, why is everyone so rude? Why are things so noisy? You know, like, why money? What is this money stuff you speak of? You know, it's jarring.
Yeah, no, man, it's the money. It's amazing what a pain it is on our society. I mean, it's like it's so cold and painful. It ruins relationships.
It does.
You know, like when you insert money into the familiar economy, then all of a sudden, like, it just destroys it. It destroys it. It's like a virus, you know. And
families,
it just, like,
yeah, it's true. It causes how many families have been, like, broken apart through
because of money.
We're beginning to get close to an hour, I think. And there's a couple things I still wanted to talk about. And so actually, this is a perfect segue because money is one of them. I want to talk about funding, and you're one of the best people to talk about this because of what you've done with Giveth and other projects. So what has and has not worked for you for funding the projects that you have been contributing to, number one, and number two, broader, like as an ecosystem, what is working well, what's not working well, what could we do better to fund the public good, basically?
I mean, I gotta say, Ethereum does an amazing job of funding the public good with their ICOs. Like, in the end, you know,
ICOs plural, so we're not talking about the Ethereum ICO, we're talking about, like, okay, yeah.
I mean, although that's one example, just like Mastercoin and all these other ones that have done ICOs prior to this, although they didn't have that name. The ability to create a financial asset is so powerful. You're literally creating value out of nothing. So you can siphon that value into the public good.
Isn't that exactly the fraud you were talking about?
It is the fraud. It is the fraud.
But you're saying it can be harnessed for the power of good.
If the governments can do it, if the large corporations can do it, the only way to compete is to also do it or to tear down their system. And we're not tearing down their system. I wish we were. It's all a fraud. Now, is it a fraud that only the rich can do, or is it a fraud that anyone can do? Because right now, anyone can. It's like in a video game saying only people in San Francisco can use this cheat code, right? Like,
well, if the SEC has their way, only rich people will be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, but they don't right now. Like, and if you have a fully decentralized system, if you can create, instead of doing it for a person, you're doing it for a cause. You're doing it for an idea that, and people who are aligned with that idea can participate. And if all of a sudden the governance of that cause or that system all of a sudden goes to shit, people have the ability to exit, right? And design. And
ideally, there's ideally, if the system is well designed, there's some accountability baked in. So like DAICO model where you can like turn off the funding or pull the funding out or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The DAICO model is like. Ethereum has done an amazing job at funding public goods as long as you do some kind of creation of a financial asset. I've started DAppNode, I've started IDEN3, or helped start IDEN3, Giveth, a lot of nonprofits, Tenegraph, Argon DAC. There's various other groups that I've been associated with helping them start, and the only ones that have succeeded had some sort of financial payback. I mean, all of these projects still exist, right? But they're all underpaying everybody. Right. They're asking for donations with nothing in return. Right. And that is a really hard sell.
So it's really interesting. I'm so happy we're talking about this because it sounds like the right thing to do is to do an ICO or STO or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, and ideally you do it with some accountability baked in. But we're having this conversation at a point in time when there's a huge backlash against ICOs for good reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting because I'm involved in a bunch of things and helping bootstrap a bunch of things, and like generally the thought is like, let's avoid doing that at all costs or if at all possible, because people are so turned off by the idea of tokens because of all the shitcoins that happen.
Yeah.
So, but you're saying that actually we should be doing this, but maybe we just need to be doing it differently. Is that kind of where we're at?
I definitely think that I've never been anti-ICO, actually. I think creating your own economy and giving that economy value, you're either playing in the economic model of someone else or you're building your own economy.
Yeah.
Those are your only options. And
That's fair.
If you want to, like think of Namecoin. Namecoin is the first fork of Bitcoin, right? And
I think it was started by the guys who run Blockstack today. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. I didn't know that.
I hope I didn't get that wrong, but I'm almost certain. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very innovative.
Yeah.
They created a common good. They created a censorship-resistant DNS.
Yeah, it was an early iteration of what's sort of become like ENS and Handshake now.
Yeah. It was the first fork of Bitcoin. Right? And no one uses it. No one cares.
There are like 12 domains that are registered on it today that are still actually being used or something.
Exactly, right? And, but yet it survives.
Yeah.
It exists. Not because if it was a startup, if it was a charity, that thing would have died a long time ago.
These things can't be killed. They're anti-fragile. This came up in a conversation recently. Someone made the point to me that what Ethereum faced in 2016 between the Shanghai DOS attacks and then the DAO, obviously, sorry, it's the other way around, but you know what I mean. Obviously, you were around at the time, right? Any centralized anything, any government, any company would not have survived that.
Yeah.
And the reason Ethereum survived was because it was this decentralized community and you couldn't kill it. You can't, you know what I mean? There's no one person, there's no one organization, there's no one server you can DOS or something, right?
It's a network and it's an economy. And economies can't be stopped, okay? They can die for sure, but if it's scalable, if you design it correctly, which they just modeled Bitcoin, which already was working. They took a model that worked, they built it around a different cause, which is censorship-resistant DNS, and now it goes today even though no one cares, right? Like Primecoin's another prime example. Who cares about prime numbers, right? That if you tried to get research to find as many prime numbers as you could, you would have to be groveling for academic
money. So they're trying
money.
to replace useless proof of work with like more meaningful.
To mine Primecoin, you have to find a prime number that hasn't been found. They found 34 or 32 million prime numbers. Okay,
that's cool.
That's ridiculous. That is amazing. They built an economy around something as silly as finding prime numbers. Right? So now,
it sounds ridiculous until you put it in the context of like Dentacoin and like 2017.
Yeah, but now building an economy around a cause or around an idea, or unfortunately most ICOs are building an economy around a company.
Or a person.
Or a person.
Which is even less ideal, yeah.
Yeah, that's not really, to me, that's not interesting, right? Building an economy around a cause or providing a common good, right? That is very interesting. And we can start, building off of that, and start taking it into the real world. That's what we're trying to do with the Common Stack. Take that same model and actually, how do we put a DAO in there that can actually start funding helping a river, Of course, it's going to have to start with helping open source projects or around these ideas.
Sure.
But like decentralized identity or decentralizing access to the internet, right? These ideas.
There's intrinsic value in all of these things, no, without a doubt. And doing it in a decentralized fashion is the future.
So that's the main project. I didn't actually think we were going to talk about my project the whole time, though. That's kind of funny because I have so many projects.
Yeah, you and I have this in common, and it's funny. I struggle with it. On the one hand, I feel blessed to be living in a time and a place where I can work on so many interesting things with so many amazing people, but then I also struggle with the focus question as well, because as you I'm sure very well know, right, there's limits on how deep you can go and how much you can accomplish without really being able to focus on kind of one thing at a time.
I mean, I had to tell everyone, listen, it's Burning Man time. I don't have time to talk about anything else. I will put out fires. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I'm not showing up to these meetings anymore.
I feel you. We're kind of getting up to an hour here, but there are three more important questions that I want to, more rapid fire kind of style, I want to ask. So the first one, and I think you'll sail with these. The first one is, what advice do you have for newcomers to our ecosystem?
Well, it depends on what they want out of this ecosystem. If they're looking for a job, find the idea that's most interesting to you. Someone who's already doing something and has been successful, they have some kind of model, and just start contributing and make yourself useful, and then like they will hire you.
So the vast majority of projects are, I mean, let's rephrase slightly. The projects that are worth contributing to are open source and permissionless, and you can find them on GitHub, and you can just begin contributing, creating value.
And
That's how I always tell
you
people,
don't need to code. You don't need to
Right.
you don't need to learn how to code even. Now you should probably try to be familiar with code.
Sure.
Of course. Not scared of it, but you really, there's so much soft skills that honestly there's too many devs and not enough soft skills.
Yeah.
Like designers, UX, community managers,
Product and project managers.
Oh yeah, we need organizations so much.
Communicators, writers. So I think this is true of basically all the things you're working on and all the things I'm working on as well. So we'll include links in the show notes here to how people can learn about and contribute to Giveth and Common Stack and
DAppNode, IDEN3, Telegraph.
all the things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's fantastic. Question number 2 is, so this is the hand you the mic magic
White
moment.
Hat Group too.
White Hat Group.
I got it for the way. Sorry.
What is the one message that you want to broadcast to the Ethereum community? Share with the world.
To the Ethereum community, man. The one message. Oh man, that's tough. I guess go to Burning Man. No.
That's a good one.
I mean, it is a pretty good one. That's where
we're gonna try to get this episode out
now.
Before Burning Man.
Yeah, exactly. Try to get yourself out there and experience like different kind of economic models that are possible, and really like widen the breadth of your design space, because there's so much more going on than hypercapitalism. There's so much more. Okay, like I'm actually okay with hypercapitalism, but it's like every problem has its own unique solution, and I'm sure hypercapitalism is the solution for many of those problems.
But not all of them.
Definitely not all of them. Probably not most of them. Okay.
What is that metaphor? To a hammer, everything's a nail.
Yeah, exactly. And so we need to stop being hammers and start being flowers and go to Burning Man. Right.
Andrew Yang has another good line, which originally comes from someone else. I don't remember who it comes from originally in his book, which is that the things that we can measure are the things that we address, right? And like all businesses operate this way. There's this concept of like legibility. And so, we optimize to things like GDP because that's what we know how to measure. But maybe we need to start measuring some of these other things like we talked about before.
Absolutely. And we can measure other things,
All right, final question is, this one should be a piece of cake for you. What other people or projects or teams or initiatives should we speak to, especially people who are a little bit less well known, maybe a little bit underappreciated or underfunded? Man, everything you just listed, by the way, like I would throw out IDEN3, Jordy's work, like
obviously
important.
Jordy is he's Batman. I'm his like somewhere between Robin and Alfred.
Visualization of that.
Probably more like Alfred, but with some of the comedy of Robin. Depending on the movie that you're looking at. But yeah, Jordy I think is doing amazing work. I think a lot of people producing wallets are doing really good work, and they're fully underappreciated.
So we've already spoken to Austin and Burner Wallet, as well as Alejandro and his work with the OMI, the Open Money Initiative in Venezuela. So they're building a wallet.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, man. I like Trustlines too.
Trustlines.
And Circles. Dude, I love. I don't know if I haven't been following very closely.
So can you tell the world what Circles is?
Okay, so Trustlines and Circles are the two organizations that I believe are changing the story of money, and that's what we really have the opportunity to do here in crypto. Is that money is an abstract concept. It's a story. It's something that is a cultural artifact. It's not real. That piece of paper has the value of a piece of paper, but we overlay a story on top of it, and that story is editable. Okay, there's nothing that's stopping us.
It's not immutable.
Yeah, it's not immutable. We can change it. And Trustlines is a mutual credit system. They basically say, hey, money can be backed by trust. So like in Venezuela, I've actually been talking to Alejandro and Trustlines Group trying to get that to work, because I feel like it's some mutual credit system, whether it's crypto based or not, would work really well in Venezuela, where they have no money because everyone has trust. I trust you up to $100. It's a complementary currency, so you still have to have a real currency somewhere, right? That it's representing. But it's like, I trust you $100, and you trust your mom to $1,000.
Sure.
Your mom could send an IOU to $100 to you, and then $100 to me, and then I would have
And it's transitive as long as you have that root in the network. Yeah.
And even better, it can be self-balancing, right? If I want to send to someone that your grandma knows, right, then I can actually cancel out my debt, right, and cancel out all of these debts when I make that send.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a direct thing. It can be like, it can optimize the route for what gets everyone to net zero trust. Right? And it's a very sexy project. They're finally coming out with their beta. Unfortunately, I love the project. I am not so certain about the direction of like having to do your own chain. And I mean, this is the problem, right? They have no other way of creating. They need to create their own financial asset.
Yeah, you need to bootstrap
so
it.
That you can bootstrap.
So Circles has an interesting approach here. So they ran a coffee shop, as I'm sure you know, in Berlin called Ground and Common, right? And I think they're planning to boot that up again, and they're trying to kind of build a little ecosystem around it so people who work there or have the option of being paid well, everyone has their own token, so it's a bit of a different system, and they want to build communities, but...
Yeah, I mean, Circles is the best because it's straight up UBI, Web of Trust style.
Right.
And then, so I don't want to explain those, look those up.
We'll include links down there.
But they everyone has their own currency that's minted at a certain rate every day, and then you can transmit it, right? And so you kind of, I don't know, I feel like Andy Milenis, there's a great video where he explains the system, and the real key thing is that we get to choose what currencies we want to use.
Exactly.
Right? And if we choose a currency that is minted by everyone every day, and we choose to give that value, then it will have value.
Yeah.
And if we choose instead to use the US dollar, which is backed by oil and the belief that the US will bomb you if you don't take it, then then that will have value. So it's up to us, and maybe we'll choose Facebook coin, because
Libra.
Yeah, Libra, because that sounds great. Who cares? But personally, I would like to put my money in Circles. I would like to put my value in Circles.
Griff coin. I want some Griff coin. I want to buy my next slice of pizza. I want to buy my next pizza with a Griff coin.
Ooh, man, that sounds good. No thanks, though. I'm not into it. I mean, one day, I like causes. Not people.
Okay.
You actually said that really well.
Cause coin. Pizza coin.
Yeah, pizza coin. Now that sounds nice. Let's get more pizzas sold.
Man, this has been so much fun. Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed talking to Santa. I mean, Griff.
Yeah, I got my Santa beard coming. It's coming in strong.
You got the costume ready to go as well?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I have so many Santa robes. But it's always...
I'm glad to know there's more than one.
Yeah, it wasn't always. I will say the first burn where I went Santa the whole time, it was not a good situation.
Is that your playa name?
Yeah, it's Santa.
I need one. You have to maybe help me come up with one this year.
We'll get one for you.
All right.
But I always hate doing videos in July and August because I have this big bushy beard to be Santa every year. But priorities.
Amazing. Thank you again. This has been fun.
Yeah, dude.
All right.
It's been good.
A Griff hug. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed speaking to Griff. Tune in again next week for a new episode featuring a conversation with designer and community builder extraordinaire Peter Pan. Peter has played a pivotal role in helping launch the Metacartel community and DAO, which is a really exciting project, and it's the first fork of Moloch DAO. We talk about DAOs and memes and user research and design and a bunch of other fun topics, so don't miss it. As always, Humans of Ethereum is completely volunteer produced and self-funded, so if you're interested in contributing time or funds to the project, there is information in the show notes below on how to do that. Have a good week, and I'll see you back here next week on the next episode of Humans of Ethereum.